The 5-minute board goes up, and that means that the pit lane is open for 5 minutes. When it closes and there's still cars stationary in the pits, that means they will have to start the race from the pits. Now you can see in the pit lane here at the South Paddock, there's a lot of standing water in the pit lane itself, but it might not be that way around the whole circuit. We had a bit of a sprinkling of rain just after the end of the previous race, which I believe was for the Malaysian Touring Car Championship in the TP2000 category. They have a half-hour race for the 2-litre competitors. But this is going to be a different scenario for the drivers once they explore the circuit. Looking at the drivers as they go around the course, Alex Sawyer has just passed my position on the main straight, and there's not a lot of spray coming off the cars. So this could be an interesting decision then for the teams, because they're going around on the reconnaissance lap. They may well decide, well, actually, the circuit is not wet enough for the wet tyres that they've just put on. So there you go. The mechanics at Black Arts have obviously got stacks of these tyres on the trolleys. They've got a set of wets and a set of scrubbed slicks. So naturally, the drivers and the teams have got an interesting decision to make here going into this first race of the season, as well as the first race of the weekend. Do we put on wet tyres or do we put on slicks? Because this is actually the nightmare decision, strategy-wise. Looking at the rain clouds up over the far end of the circuit, there are still quite a few of them. So wet tyres would be a safe bet. But this is Malaysia. It's hot, it's humid. The track drains and dries very quickly indeed here. So if you go on to wet tyres now, you might find that in 5 minutes' time, slick tyres might be the way to go. So this is a tough decision then. And we've had a problem out on the circuit. That is the number 7, that's Josh Berry. On the reconnaissance lap, he's had an incident. Now, I don't know whether he's hit anything or not, but he's certainly stationary out on the circuit. What has happened to Josh Berry? Can he get the car started again? The answer is yes, he can, but that's a slip-up on the first hairpin. Now, he's gone out on slicks, interestingly, so that, again, will also tell the teams a lot. On the reconnaissance lap, he's chosen to put slick tyres on. The others, on the whole, I think, have gone for wet tyres, but Josh Berry decided to go around the course on slicks. That's a tough mission for the rookie driver. He's basically the canary down the mine, testing everybody's decision-making. There is the 37, that is young Ben Nguyen, who has done a fantastic job on his first weekend in the Black Arts Racing team. This is his first car race of any kind, this particular event. Last week he was racing in the IAME Series Asia Championship, just down the road from here at the LYL International Circuit, the new karting facility just off to the east of the city of Kuala Lumpur, which is already Formula One grade, in my opinion. Certainly the closest karting circuit in the world to a Formula One racetrack. As the number 12, Alex Sawyer, will now take up his position on the dummy grid rather than going to the pits. So he only needed 1 reconnaissance lap. A lot of the drivers tend to go for 2. But Alex Sawyer has decided, right, well, I've got wet tyres on. I don't think it's wet enough for wet tyres. Maybe we need to change for slicks. So that is the decision. Look, they're standing by with slick tyres. So now they're going to have a conversation. How wet is it, Alex? Well, I don't think it's that wet, looking at it myself. But then I'm not Alex Sawyer, so I can't make that kind of decision. So it could be an interesting one to decide what the mechanics try to do. Well, they're certainly going to lift up the front nose of the car, and it looks like they're going to take the wet tyres off and put the slicks on. There you go. So that tells us everything we need to know. At the moment then, wet tyres. As far as Alex Sawyer, the pole position man, is concerned, wet tyres are not the way to go. So that would tell us a lot about the decision-making within the teams. If Alex Sawyer feels that it's not worthy of slick tyres, I can see that they're going to do exactly the same thing to the cars of all of the drivers in the top 5. Looks like Wong Xiong Wei is also changing from wets to slicks. So there you go. Seth Gilmore is asking his team to do the same thing. There is Josh Evans, team principal of the Evans GP squad, getting himself involved. It looks like they're going to make exactly the same change at the Evans GP team for their other man, Thomas Yu Lee, the driver who carries the Star Spangled Banner on his helmet. So there we go, the change to scrubbed slicks. I should say they're not box fresh slick tyres on most of these cars, because they've only got a certain number of slick tyres that they can use over the week. So they are obviously going to be using dry tyres that have already been scrubbed in. So they're not going to be perfect like they would be for the start of a qualifying run, but certainly worthy enough to go the distance of 25 minutes plus the additional lap. But the rain that we've had just before the start of this race certainly caught the drivers and teams out. They put wet tyres on, they've done the reconnaissance lap, and on the whole, everybody said, you know what, this is not a wet enough circuit. Because the one thing you don't want is to be on wet tyres when the track is drying fast. That is the one thing you don't want, because these tyres will churn like butter on a hot pan. They are just impossible to keep traction on. You've got to have enough water to make these wet tyres work. And it's very difficult indeed to put yourself in that position to make it work. So they're all glad they've been able to make that decision. The big question is, will it rain again during the course of this race? Because we had quite a heavy shower on the main straight and the South Paddock, but I don't know if that rain is going to come back during the course of this race, and there's a very good chance of it doing so. Looking at the cloud cover, there's quite a lot of clouds overhead. Now that's interesting, they've decided that the race start is going to be under safety car. Now that is a very interesting decision. So considering how dry it is, they've decided to be on the safe side here. Rather than have the let's see what happens approach, they've actually decided to give these youngsters, who, don't forget, are as young as 15 years of age, the option to start the race under safety car. Now, if this was Formula One, I would have said, what's the point of that? They are experienced, they know what they're doing, they've got cars with decent electronics on them, so that is a very stupid decision. But because this is F4, that's a very sensible decision. You've got to remember that these guys are 15, 16, 17 years of age at their youngest. They're driving these cars on this circuit for the first time in many cases. They don't have fancy electronics. There are no electronics on this car pretty much in terms of driving aids. So they've got to drive everything box fresh. They don't have tyre warmers, so they can't get the tyres up to temperature unless they do it themselves. And it's just had a big rain shower here at Sepang. So although they are all opting to go onto slick tyres, starting the race under safety car is actually a very sensible decision based on the age group that we are running with. Because the last thing you want to do in these situations is have the let's see what happens approach. If there is even a 1% doubt in the mind of the race director, they should be saying, we start the race under the safety car. So I actually think this is a very smart decision under the circumstances. So Alex Sawyer will be starting from pole position, but the race will begin behind the safety car. Hopefully we're only going to need one lap behind the safety car. They may decide to go for a second, but I do think under the circumstances this is the best decision. Just because these guys, a lot of them don't have experience in this car, on this circuit, with these tyres, having just had a rain shower. So they've clearly decided, as Snappy Gilmore gives us a nice little fist bump and a wave there. I've been told that his new helmet design is actually going to feature a crocodile. So they're really running with this Snappy Gilmore image that the team invented during the off-season in the Middle East. But it's going to be an interesting one for the contenders. There is Inigo Anton. Now, this is a man you're going to hear a lot about in 2025. He is a real talent for the future, this man, and he's definitely going to be following in the wheel tracks of the likes of Yovi Marcello, Marlon Stockinger and Bianca Bustamante, who have all flown the Philippines flag over the last 30 years in motorsport to a very successful degree. And Inigo Anton is definitely the next man in line for that. Third on the grid for both of the qualifying sessions, and definitely a talent of the future. As a rookie driver, he's outpaced all the rest of his team at the Black Arts team, so that's very exciting stuff. There is Rishon Rajiv, the Indian star, who is a race winner in both F4 India and the Indian Racing League. A bit of a superstar on Disney Hotstar Plus over in India. A great talent again to watch out for. Serial overtaker as well, so definitely one that could make up the opportunities in varying conditions. There is the talented Chinese racer Cheng Meng. So Cheng Meng is going to be working his way forward. He's got a lot of sports car experience taken into this, so he'll make his way into the Evans GP seat with a lot of experience of the past. And there is Wong Shong Wei, another driver who has pretty much driven everything there is to drive out in Asia in the last 5 years. He's driven it all. He's done Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. He's done the Fanatec GT Asia Championship. He's done Chinese GT, I do believe. He's done Chinese touring cars. He's done Formula Regional Middle East. He's done Formula 4 here in Southeast Asia. So pretty much, if the car has an engine and it has wheels, you can entrust Wong Shong Wei to drive it around as quickly as possible. Now, there is the new Vietnamese talent, Ben Huynh. So it'll be fascinating to see what he can do from 7th on the starting grid for the Black Arts Racing team. Last week, he was racing in IAME X30 in the IAME Series Asia Championship at the LYL International Circuit. So this is a big jump to go from X30 karting straight into F4 a week later. So a big opportunity for the Vietnamese talent. Watch out for what he does with it. Here's the man starting in 8th on the grid. This is Joshua Berry for the Black Arts Racing team from Singapore. Great talent, great racing family, of course. The Berry clan have had motor racing very much hardwired into their veins over the years, but Joshua Berry is of Australian and Korean heritage, whilst also being of Singapore license. I'm fairly sure that's where he lives now, so he's got real pedigree of racing. And this is arguably the best looking car on the starting grid with the best looking helmet design. Thomas Yu Lee of the United States, geared up, pumped up, revved up and ready to go from the back of the grid after a difficult first qualifying session, but I don't think he's going to stay there long. He's definitely got the mentality to work his way forward. We may have a small grid for this first round of the championship, but as I've said many times, at the first race where there's a small grid and a couple of years later there's a big grid, from small acorns, mighty oaks will always grow. And don't forget that we didn't have the F4 Southeast Asia Championship at all last season, had to take a hiatus. So it's great to be back, and we've got a very busy calendar as well. We've got this opening weekend at Sepang in Malaysia, then a few weeks' time we go to Buriram in Thailand on the Chang International Circuit. Then a few weeks after that we go street racing at the site of the Bang Saen Grand Prix, also in Thailand, and it really is the Southeast Asian Monaco after the likes of fantastic street races that we've had in the past at Po, at Macau, and of course at Monaco. So it'll be really exciting to see what the Bang Saen Grand Prix, the third round of the F4 Southeast Asia Championship, will provide. And that is a really tough street circuit. I ask you and beg you, implore you, if you've never heard of the Bang Saen Grand Prix, YouTube it after the race and go and watch some of the highlights of last year's encounter, and then imagine that we're going to have F4 cars there for the very first time in 2025. That is such an exciting prospect. Then we have the final 2 weekends of the championship back here at the Sepang International Circuit, familiar territory. Sadly, no racing in China in 2025 and no racing at Macau, because that is going to revert back to its traditional format of having the Formula Regional cars as the main event of the Macau Grand Prix. There have been invitational races in the past for F4, as well as having that be an extra round, as you were, of the F4 Southeast Asia Championship back in 2023. But we will not be racing at Macau this year, hopefully again in the future. We've got ourselves some very exciting missions to come. So there is a very unusual situation here at Sepang, because the flag marshal there has only got one job, and that's to wave the green flag this time. He won't have to do it again, because of course when the race starts properly it will do so on the main straight, and we're obviously going to be starting this race as soon as we get the command for the safety car to leave, rather than on the starting grid stationary in 3 minutes time. It's actually going to be a start under safety car. Now you're sitting there having only just joined us going, what? The circuit is dry. Why are they starting under safety car? Well, you've got to remember that this is F4. They are 15, 16 and 17 years of age in these cars. Some of them have never driven a single-seater car at speed in a race before. Certainly not at Sepang, and certainly not after a rain shower that was pretty heavy about 20 minutes ago. And the circuit is drying, but it's not bone dry, as we found from Joshua Berry on the reconnaissance lap. So although they've all decided to go onto slick tyres, because that is the sensible choice long term, the first couple of laps are still going to be fairly greasy, even though the track is drying rapidly. So if there's only 1% of doubt in the race director's mind, I'm of the same mind as him. These are not your children. These are not your youngsters. You have a duty of care to them. If it means starting the race under safety car for one lap and then sending them to race conditions, do it. I think it's absolutely correct to make this decision under the circumstances, because the let's see what happens approach has absolutely no business at all in modern motorsport. I would much rather they were safe than sorry, because these guys want to come back in the same condition that they got into the car. So it's a very sensible move from the race officials, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. So the cars are now dialed in and ready for the start. They've got their flashing red lights on. That's because they have been instructed to do so by the race officials. There's a good chance they'll leave those on, because if we get a rain shower in the middle of the race, which could still happen, of course, then that's obviously going to be the only point of call for the car behind to see the car in front. If there is a big shower in the middle of the race, one of two things is likely to happen. Teams will obviously try to come into the pits and cut their losses and make the change to wet tyres. Second thing, which is the more likely cause, is that the race can be suspended because everybody is obviously on slick tyres. So the race will begin under safety car conditions, and that is going to be the start of the race. 25 minutes plus one lap. It's going to be Alex Sawyer on pole position from Seth Gilmore, Inigo Anton and Rishon Rajiv from Chengmeng, Wang Shengwei, then Ben Wing, Joshua Berry and Thomas Yu Lee. That will be the first starting grid of the 2025 Formula 4 Southeast Asia Championship season. And so as the safety car pulls away from the starting grid here in Sepang, the first race of the F4 Southeast Asia Championship 2025 is underway. Now, the time will actually start ticking when they cross the finish line on the Formula 1 circuit, because that is the first point of call at the timing line. Here we're obviously on the dummy starting grid on South Paddock, but they will run under safety car on the first lap. Hopefully it's only one lap, and they will only need that one lap. But of course, protocol has to be adhered to. The timing line is coming up as the drivers will go through behind the safety car here. So the timing line will be triggered as they come through now, and that will be the start of the race. Yes, indeed it is. So the start has begun, although we are under safety car conditions, of course. Interestingly, counting all the cars, all 9 of them are there. And Alex Sawyer is leading them round under safety car conditions. So the race has officially begun, but of course it's behind the safety car. Time is ticking, but they are not allowed to overtake under safety car conditions. So we can certainly run you through the grid in its full order. And it is going to be an exciting challenge for all the contenders as they gear themselves up ready for the show. And with all 9 drivers on the starting grid, we are ready to get ourselves under race conditions. Front row of the grid, Alex Sawyer and Seth Gilmore. Second row of the grid, Inigo Anton and Rishon Rajiv. Third row of the starting grid is going to be Cheng Meng of China and Wang Shengwei of the Origin Motorsports team. On the 4th row of the starting grid will be the Black Arts pair of Ben Ying of Vietnam and Joshua Berry of Singapore. Those 2 men will go together on the 4th row of the starting grid. And then the final row of the starting grid will be taken up by Thomas Yu Lee of the Evans GP squad. He will be there alone on 9th position of the starting grid as we start this race under safety car conditions. So, of course, if anything were to occur during this first couple of laps of racing, then obviously the race officials can decide that they're going to take a different call in terms of getting themselves up to speed. But it's difficult to know who exactly is going to have the best of it from the start. And obviously with the slick tyres that the drivers have got on the cars at the moment and the track drying quickly, it shouldn't take too long to get us into a race position. The official start time has been declared at 3 p.m. and 39 seconds exactly. The safety car is under strict instruction to make sure that the drivers are in their correct formation. Evans GP 1 and 2, Black Arts Racing 3 and 4 for Alex Sawyer and Seth Gilmore, and then Inigo Anton and Rishon Rajiv respectively. 5th is Cheng Meng, then 6th is Wang Shengwei, then Ben Ying and Joshua Berry, followed by Thomas Yu Lee of the Evans GP squad. We're waiting for the lights to go out on the safety car. When they do, it will peel off into the pits and we will go racing. Whether that will happen at the end of the first lap or whether that will happen at the end of the second lap is yet to be notified to us, but it should happen in the next few seconds if they're going to do just one expansion lap, of course. Drivers will know in a few seconds because the lights will be extinguished and then we will know. But it's very late in this lap to make the decision if they're going to do it, so I think they're going to go around a second time just to be on the safe side. Again, just to be on the safe side is the right call, because you don't know with these youngsters at the age of 15, 16, 17 just how big a risk they're taking, and you certainly don't know that if you're watching and sat at home having never raced a car unless it's online. These guys know how tricky it is in these cars around this circuit, and a couple of the drivers were telling me that if it's even slightly greasy, having had the previous race championships out on the circuit that there have been for both the Porsche Sprint Challenge of Indonesia and the Malaysian Touring Car Championships, it can get very greasy indeed, because the more rubber they lay down mixed with the water that falls on the circuit, the more tricky it is for these cars to have optimal grip. So it's never easy to get the best out of them in those circumstances. It may mean we lose 5 minutes of the race distance, but it means that the drivers will be safe. That's the only thing that really matters above anything else. And full credit to the officials, clerk of the course, and of course the marshals around the course here, the men and women in their orange and yellow jumpsuits. They've been absolutely fantastic over the course of the weekend, keeping everybody safe. We had a rather nasty incident in the previous Malaysian touring car race earlier on, and fortunately everybody is okay and everybody is unhurt, and that is largely down to the incredible response times of the safety teams here in Malaysia. Everybody just gearing themselves up, ready for the start on what is hopefully going to be the end of the second lap of the F4 Southeast Asia Championship. It's looking fairly dry now up at turn 4, certainly through 5 and 6, where I had a fantastic vantage point when I was here commentating for the Motul 12 Hours of Sepang. What a fantastic race that was a couple of months ago. And now we get to see where they go. There we go, safety car will be in at the end of this lap. They only need 2 laps of reconnaissance to understand what the conditions are like. That is great news for us, because it means we will get to go racing very shortly indeed. So very exciting. So the competitors are now getting themselves ready for the start, and it will be a safety car in at the end of this lap, so we will go racing very quickly indeed. And I'm excited to see what happens next now, because the drivers are up to speed when they get to the end of this lap, and then we'll go racing for the first time. For a lot of them, it's going to be the early jitters of the excitement that's going to really test the nerve and resolve of these competitors. I'm quite excited for what happens next now, because the safety car lights will go out on the safety car, probably on the back straight, I would have thought. We've certainly had notification that it will start this time. The crew at Origin looking out for Wang Xiongwei, who starts P6 on the grid, the Chinese talent. They're watching what we're watching, to right. So the safety car has now turned its lights off. That tells the drivers, led by Alex Sawyer, the man in pole position, that they're going to come into the pits at the end of this lap. So the safety car will go to the Formula 1 pit lane, and now the drivers are gearing up ready. So Alex Sawyer is the man who's got the responsibility here to back up the pack, warm up his tyres and brakes to the optimum temperature. They've got to make sure that they do the tyre warm-up correctly. You do not want to lock up into turn 1. There is Cooper Webster to the right of your picture. Cooper Webster, a former F4 champion in his own right, won the F4 Indian Championship a couple of seasons ago. Now is a driver coach within the Evans GP fold. Alex Sawyer has stopped weaving his tyres. That's a sign that he's going to go to race conditions very shortly indeed. So let's see when Alex Sawyer drops the hammer. Will he be halfway through the apex of the hairpin? You would probably guess so. Seth Gilmore is trying to pitch when he is going to hit the throttle. And the answer to that question is now. He nails it. Seth Gilmore's not got a bad start at all. As they go off the turn. Nico Anton's gone with him. And we are for the first time in F4 Southeast Asia 2025. Green here at Sepang. Off we go, and Seth Gilmore has made a good start here. He's going to challenge Alex Sawyer to turn 1. Sawyer's going to protect the inside line. Gilmore's going to have a bit more confidence to the outside line. And then try and turn back into the switch. Richard Rajiv is on the move on his teammate, Inigo Anton. So Anton has to control the radius through the first hairpin as they go out of turn 2. And then push their way further around the course. It looks like it's no change. Although Seth Gilmore was giving a little bit of pressure to Alex Sawyer. So they work their way up the hill. Alex Sawyer still trying to warm the tyres at the back end, almost stepped down it. And there is a spinner in the background. That's Joshua Berry. So Joshua Berry spins his car through turn 3 and has ended up in the gravel. Well, that just shows you that 2 laps of reconnaissance was the right conditions. You don't know how wet it is out there. Joshua Berry's just found out the hard way. And he's gone clean off the road, losing the back end of the car. It's still very treacherous. Let's have a look and see how he did it. He's just carried so much speed through there. And unfortunately, the back end has snapped away from him. He can't control the car, and he's gone straight into the gravel on the exit of turn 3. So easy to do. They're still trying to warm up the tyres and brakes. I don't know if this is going to go to safety car or not. There's a very good chance it will, because Joshua Berry is now off the road at a rather precarious point on the course as well. And if he's in the gravel, he won't be able to get out easily, and he can't get out with assistance from the marshals. That's not allowed. So I think this is going to be another safety car period, unfortunately. And Inigo Anton is putting Seth Gilmore under some pressure on the opening tour, which is excellent news from the young man from the Philippines. He's closing in, but there is Josh Berry's car still stranded up at turn 3. So I think we're going to go safety car here, but we obviously need to wait. Inigo Anton looks like he could be a threat to Seth Gilmore in racing conditions. Alex Sawyer is still trying to warm up the tyres and brakes, still not quite finding the pace he wants from them. Seth Gilmore is trying desperately to keep Inigo Anton at bay. Anton is trying to put pressure on the Australian, but it looks like we're going to go through without a safety car. So on we go. Anton is really racing Seth Gilmore hard here. Yellow flags, safety car is called. Well, that was the last possible moment to call the safety car, but at least they did so on time. So Alex Young in the far part of your picture, watching on his Black Arts Racing team's progress. And unfortunately, one of those drivers has spun it off into the gravel trap. That is Joshua Berry, who has retired from this race with a big spin on the way through turn 3. Not exactly what he needed to start his season, but I'm afraid that is the way the cookie has crumbled for the Singaporean. So on the restart, it looks as though it's going to be an interesting one for Inigo Anton. He really was putting pressure on Seth Gilmore there towards the end of the lap. Had we stayed at green flag conditions, I think the Philippines driver would have challenged into second place there. So the paddock is now watching as the drivers are trying to get away from Josh Berry's car. Josh has not got out of the car, I notice. He's still there. The recovery team has now reached him, but it's actually probably more beneficial for Josh Berry to assist them in helping to steer the car when they tow it out of the gravel trap, but he's gone a long way in. So very unfortunate indeed for the Singaporean. No chance of recovery in this race, so he's out, I'm afraid. Alex Sawyer, Seth Gilmore and Inigo Anton. That's your top three from Rishon Rajiv and Cheng Meng. Then Wang Shengwei, then Ying and Thomas Yu Lee. That's the order, as we have one driver having spun out of the race on turn 3. Just too much throttle, unfortunately, coming off that hairpin, and that's where you end up having a massive amount of opposite lock. These cars are very nimble, they're very light, so you put a lot of throttle on, and the back end just wants to rotate. It takes on a lot of exertion through that particular corner, especially as there's a little bit of elevation change, a little camber offshoot through turn 3 as well. So if you get the wrong line and you put too much throttle on, it's very, very easy for the back end to snap away. And Josh Berry, newcomer to the world of single-seater racing, has learnt about that the hard way. So there are the Evans GP crew, just assessing the situation. They've still got 4 cars running. 1 and 2 for Alex Sawyer and Seth Gilmore. And then we've got Cheng Meng in P5 and Thomas Yu Lee in 8th position. So they've got a little bit of everything, really, in this race. They've got front runners, they've got a midfielder, and they've got a tail ender. So Evans GP living the entire experience in this F4 Southeast Asia Championship race. We are going to get more drivers through the course of the season as well, I should point out. This isn't going to be the only Grand Prix races, hopeful Grand Prix races in the future that we are going to have in this particular paddock. We've got more drivers scheduled to come over the course of the season to the championship. We're going to see the Bekelo Star Performance team with their 2 young Thai drivers later in the season, Wadapong Amwichan and Ayrton Asdathorn, who are due to race from round 2 of the championship, which will be at the Bunadam circuit, the Chang International, which is where they have MotoGP, of course, and they hosted the first round of their championship earlier in the 2025 campaign. They'll also be racing with us on the streets of Bang Saen. The Bang Saen Grand Prix, definitely going to be an exciting one. Safety car ready at the end of this lap, as you've noticed. And that's Alex Sawyer bunching up the pack once again. Watch for Inigo Anton on this restart. He's definitely going to be one to watch then from 3rd position. He put Seth Gilmore under a lot of pressure. Alex Sawyer going a little bit early on the throttle compared to what he did on the opening tour. And he's got a bit more distance now between himself and Seth Gilmore, who's now in the clutches of Inigo Anton. For the second time, it's green, 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 green. And off the drivers go as they fly their way forward. So it's going to be Inigo Anton who's really going to be on the edge here of Seth Gilmore. Might make a challenge into turn 1, although he is a long way back at the braking point. So I don't really see that one coming up just yet. He's certainly got to work his magic. Seth Gilmore, a little bit of a wide radius, tightens it back up to try and make sure that Inigo Anton doesn't get a cheeky overtaking move on the way through. So certainly for the time being at least, Alex Sawyer holds the lead as they work their way through. This is where the trouble started on the previous start. Is everybody going to get through cleanly this time? Well, there's a couple of wobbles, so everybody does get through, but there were a couple of twitches, so it is still greasy on that part of the course. No wonder that Josh Berry found the grid almost completely impossible for him to go around. Certainly for a driver who's still learning the ropes, it would be easy to lose it. Now the drivers are going to work their way through up at turns 5, the left-hander, turn 6, the right-hander, which are taken at very high speed as we watch the dual livery run by Thomas Yu Lee in the Evans GP car. So at the moment it is Evans GP 1 and 2, Black Arts Racing 3 and 4 up front. Inigo Anton is definitely trying to put Seth Gilmore under some pressure here for 2nd position. Down to the brakings over the hairpin. Oh, big wobble from Seth Gilmore. Snappy, was looking a little bit snappy there, but manages to get it rotated nicely through the apex. Seth Gilmore definitely growing in confidence. Didn't really get the chance to shine in the Middle East for my money. He had a couple of issues where the car ended up snapping away from him, and he ended up having a lot less track time than he deserved over the course of that Middle East campaign. But he's getting it back together now here in the Southeast Asia Championship. It's good to bump into him on the starting grid of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia Championship at his track at the Sydney Motorsport Park a few weeks ago. He was definitely riding confident and looking good for a potential campaign in F4 later this year. He said, we're going to put things together, we're going to make sure that we'll be on the grid and we'll be challenging for race wins. And here he is doing just that, although he's got pressure from the Philippines youngster Inigo Anton, backed by Motul for this 2025 campaign in the F4 Southeast Asian Championship. And he and Rishon Rajiv are already putting the pressure on Seth Gilmore as they complete lap 5. So it'll be an interesting one to see what happens then for the contenders as they continue to put pressure on the drivers in front. Seth Gilmore is the man who is basically giving Alex Sawyer an easy time of it up front by comparison, because Sawyer has got this nice little Seth Gilmore shield for the drivers behind. We've got a great duel going on between Wang Shengwei and Cheng Meng. In fact, Wang has got ahead of Cheng. So the Chinese drivers racing again, and that's Rishon Rajiv going around. Rishon Rajiv's done exactly the same thing that we saw from Josh Berry. This time he's able to save it. Now, Rishon Rajiv is a very experienced driver in F4, so for him to lose it, that tells you how tricky the conditions are on that particular corner. So anybody who would have wanted to throw the book at Josh Berry, well, Rishon Rajiv is no novice. He's got a lot of experience in F4. So for him to have lost it there, it tells you how tricky the car is. Let's see again. Again, he's just carried so much speed through that corner, which you are used to doing. But the traction disappeared for him. He snaps it away and suddenly recovers. So we've had one of the Black Arts Racing drivers drop it into the gravel and retire. The other one has spun it and dropped to the back of the field. So big mistake from Rishon Rajiv, but easily done when you've got reduced grip on slick tyres. So it's not as bone dry as you think it is out there. It certainly looks like a fairly dry race circuit, but there are patches of water in various parts of the course. And some parts drain quicker than others, so it's a bit of a knife edge for the drivers. They are finding that it's tougher than they think. So Alex Sawyer of Vietnam leads the way here in front of Seth Gilmore and Inigo Anton. Vietnam ahead of Australia and the Philippines in the top 3 positions. Seth Gilmore, a pretty fine time to be an Australian in the world of motorsport at the moment, because we've got an Australian leading the World Championship for the first time in 15 years. We've also got some very talented racers coming through the mix here. The 2 Chinese talents, Wang Shengwei and Cheng Meng. A lot of Chinese drivers coming through the single-seater ranks now, thanks to the brilliance of Zhou Guanyu, becoming China's first ever Formula 1 driver back in 2022. Down the straight, as Wang Shengwei uses his experience to good advantage here over Cheng Meng. 2 drivers who are used to racing in single-seater as well as GT, so they know all sorts of different types of racecraft. Single-seaters are a very different kettle of fish to what they've previously been driving in. So these F4 cars are very tough to get used to. Now, Seth Gilmore is dropping back a little bit from Alex Sawyer, but crucially, so is Inigo Anton from Seth Gilmore. He's not quite able to keep the same sort of pace that he was hoping for. Track limits, first warning for the number 17 car, that is Cheng Meng. So his battle with Wang Shengwei has been a little bit over-eager at places then for the Chinese talent Cheng Meng. So he's got to be careful where he positions the car. He doesn't want 3 warnings. Once he gets a 3rd, then he's going to have a penalty go his way. But certainly for the moment, it's all relatively measurable at the moment. Alex Sawyer is bagging in purple sectors at the moment. 28.2 in Sector 1, 28.4 in Sector 2. So Alex Sawyer is absolutely cantering to the victory. He was actually telling me after the qualifying session, I had a candid word with him. I said, how did that feel? He went, I was driving so badly. I was quite disappointed with myself. And I sat there and thought, and you still backed pole position? I'm a little concerned now for everybody else, if that's the case. But he was slightly shy and nervous to admit. He said, I didn't feel like I drove that car very well at all. The car felt fantastic. And I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't really put it where I wanted it to. So for him to then suddenly be in that position, that tells you a lot about his confidence coming into 2025. But now he's maximising it. Another purple 3rd sector this time for Alex Sawyer. So the Vietnam talent is keeping it very nicely done indeed. 2nd place for Seth Gilmore. 3rd position for Inigo Anton. And then the 2 Chinese talents, Wang Shengwei and Cheng Meng, ahead of Ben Ring, Thomas Yuli and Rishon Rajiv, who spun his car down to the back of the field. He is a very lucky man, by the way, Rishon Rajiv, that he was able to return to the racetrack, because he went off exactly the same place that Josh Berry did. And of course, Berry's spin, it buried him in the gravel. So the fact that Rishon Rajiv was able to recover from it, very fortuitous indeed. Wang Shengwei goes past my position in 4th place ahead of Cheng Meng. Then Ben Ying, and then it is Thomas Yuli chased down by Rishon Rajiv, who is still trying to get his car up to pace after his little spin earlier on. He's just done a 2:11.882. That's nearly 2.5 seconds a lap quicker than Thomas Uli's managed. So it isn't going to be too long until he catches him up again, whether he'll have time to overtake him or not. With 5.5 minutes to go, I'd say he probably has got the time to do that. He might have the time to get past Benyuing as well, but I'm not too sure about these two. I'm not sure he'll catch Wang Shengwei and Cheng Meng in time unless they start racing each other again. If they do, then they're going to hold each other up, and that's going to give Rishon Rajiv the chance to at least move back into 4th position where he was when he spun originally. So that's Rishon Rajiv's mission, to try and get back into the top 4. Top 5 might just be out of reach, actually. He might only end up getting to as high as P6. He's got to get ahead of Thomas Uli first, and then Benyuing to make it work. So it's going to be an interesting one then to figure it out. With Joshua Berry, of course, out of the race after his spin on the first green flag up of this race on lap 3. He lost the back end of the Black Arts number 7 and ended up in the gravel trap. Very easily done in these conditions. So there is Benyuing. He is the other Vietnamese driver in this race after the race leader Alex Sawyer. And incredibly, the two contenders, apparently they go to school about 1 kilometre away from each other, and the first time they had met was this weekend. Incredibly, you'd think that Vietnamese racers would all know each other, with it being such a small community, but no, apparently they had not met each other until this weekend, even though they go to school 1 kilometre apart from each other back home in Vietnam. Very unusual. So there is the dual livery, orange on one side, teal on the other for Thomas Uli. It looks very impressive indeed. And the Evans GP driver who has his very own style to bring to the racetrack. It's definitely a livery I want to adapt into my sim rig when I get home next week. But knowing the genius talents that there are in sim modding these days, that livery is going to be available in about 48 hours. So Alex Sawyer leads the way. Seth Gilmore is 3.3 seconds back now. Inigo Anton is slowly slipping away, but he's trying to just stay within touch, just to make sure there might be one last chance. These two are starting to time a little bit, Wang Shengwei and Cheng Meng. Their lap times are dropping now, away from the pace of the leaders. They've just done 2:12s each, which, okay, are their personal bests. But when you consider that Alex Sawyer and Seth Gilmore are doing 2:10s, and Inigo Anton's just done a 2:11.2, that tells you how much time they're losing per lap. And Rishon Rajiv has just done a 2:11.9, so he's quicker than both these two drivers. In the background, you might well see Rishon Rajiv very soon indeed, as he's catching up to Thomas Uli. But the problem he's got now, that he's catching up to the tail of the train, is that he's got dirty air to cope with, and that is going to be a bit of a difficulty. So he has to be very careful about how he goes about this now, because it could be a very tricky scenario for him to manage. So he's got to be very careful how he deals with the situation. Another purple sector 2 for Alex Sawyer, 28.443 as he goes past the timing beacon this time at the end of sector 2. This is probably the closest race battle we've got going on at the moment between the two Chinese talents, Wang Shengwei and Cheng Meng. Hopefully it's going to stay clean all the way throughout, although Cheng Meng certainly needs to find a little bit more pace if he wants to get back on terms with Wang Shengwei, one of the most experienced drivers, if not the most experienced driver in this field. He's done all sorts of competition, and he's used to driving the Formula Regional car in the Middle East Championship the last couple of seasons as well, which is a very physical racing car to drive indeed. But Wang Shengwei, still a very competitive racer, part of the Origin Motorsport team, formerly known as R&B Racing, of course. They have all sorts of interest in all sorts of different competitions. They compete in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia, they compete in the Chinese GT Championship, they compete in Fanatec GT Asia. They've done all sorts of competition over the years, and of course in single-seaters, both in Formula Regional in the Middle East and here in F4 in the Southeast Asian Championship. So there is Rishon Rajiv, having caught up to Thomas Uli. Bit of a lock-up from the American. You can see for yourself now, one side of the car is pale orange, and the other side as he comes through is in teal. But Rishon Rajiv couldn't care less what colour his race car is right now. He's focusing on putting Thomas Uli into a tricky situation into turn 1 so that he can make the overtake. Thomas Uli racing him. In the background you can see Nikhil Bora, who is a former winner in both F4 and Formula Regional over the years. He's racing here in the Malaysian Touring Car Championship this weekend. You see a replay of Thomas Uli. This is how to get it wrong. It's how to flat spot a GT tyre as well. So Thomas Uli getting it very wrong in the hairpin. Fortunately, he manages to keep in front of Rishon Rajiv for the moment. There is the 37, that is Benyuing. Oh no, sorry, that's 33 Inigo Anton, but he's on his own now. So you can see he's dropped 2 seconds back from Seth Gilmore on his own in third position, finding it very tricky to stay with the pace of the Evans GP pair up front. Alex Sawyer has managed to pull out 4 seconds, by the way, on Seth Gilmore, so this is looking pretty comprehensory for the Vietnamese driver. And even in the reverse grid race tomorrow, it looks to me as though he's not going to have too much of an issue working his way back to the front, the way things currently stack up. And certainly for race 3 tomorrow, this kind of pace is ominous for at least 2 victories, if not 3, for the weekend for the Vietnamese talent. There is Seth Gilmore trying to stay in touch with this man, Alex Sawyer, very talented young competitor. Still very new to the world of car racing, of course. Alex Sawyer only really had his first car race back in the tail end of 2023. Had a variable season last year, which involved a little bit of F4, but also involved Formula Regional Europe. He was very wet behind the ears to go back into it, but he's been eyeing up all sorts of competition. He's hoping to do some single-seater racing in Britain later this year. Whether that's in GB4 or GB3 is remains to be seen. Of course, those are the 2 options, really, if you're going to race single-seaters in Great Britain. And as we come through, we are going to start the last lap. Time has run down, and so we go into the last lap now for Alex Sawyer. He's going to complete 11 laps of this Sepang course in the first race of the season, thanks to the 2 safety car periods that we had, totaling 3 laps of the course. Alex Sawyer in second position. Alex Sawyer in the lead, I should say. Seth Gilmore is in second place. Then Inigo Anton, the Philippines driver for Black Arts. Then these 2 battling away, Wang Xiongwei and Cheng Meng, the 2 Chinese drivers for Origin and Evans GP. And you can see that Wang Xiongwei is trying to shake off the talents of Cheng Meng as Alex Young watches on, the Black Arts Racing team principal, hoping that Inigo Anton can get a little bit closer to Seth Gilmore in the closing stages of this race, which of course we're in now. There is Inigo Anton chasing down this man, Seth Gilmore. But it looks to me as though we're not going to have a lot of time for him to catch up. Certainly there's time for Wang Xiongwei to make a mistake and Cheng Meng to take advantage of the situation. These guys are 8 seconds clear of Ben Yuing in 6th position. Then Rishon Rajiv, who is ahead of Thomas Yu Lee. We didn't see the overtaking move, but he has got ahead of the American. I'm not sure if he's got time now to get ahead of Ben Yuing to move up into P6, so that might be all that Rishon Rajiv can do before the end of this race to recover. But certainly for Cheng Meng, he's still got a chance to take on Wang Xiongwei here for 4th position. As they work their way through to the double right apex, then parallel to the back straight. It's a very tough part of the course, this, and Wang Xiongwei is definitely making it very tricky for Cheng Meng, who almost drives off the circuit trying to get out of the dirty air of Wang Xiongwei's car. Sliding the car around a little bit now as it gets very hot out there. But the checkered flag is less than half a lap away for these 2. Out in front, of course, for the Vietnamese talent, Alex Sawyer. He is already on the back straight, and this has been a masterclass effort from the Vietnamese talent. Race winner at the Chinese Formula One Grand Prix last year in F4 China. Winner even before that in F4 India in his first ever campaign in a racing car. This man has got so much potential, and he's certainly making 2025's F4 Southeast Asia Championship opener his own in dominant fashion. Here comes the man from Vietnam. Alex Sawyer takes the victory here at Sepang in the first race of the F4 Southeast Asia Championship 2025. Much to the delight of the Evans GP team. They get a 1 and a 2 as well, as Seth Gilmore comes home second. Inigo Anton, the rookie, comes home third overall and gets a rookie win for his troubles. Wang Xiongwei is going to manage to hang on here in front of Cheng Meng of the Evans GP squad, and in the background that is going to be Ben Yuing, the Vietnamese driver, who will finish ahead of his teammate Rishon Rajiv, who has run out of time to make the progress. Thomas Yu Lee is going to come through in 8th position, and that is all she wrote. Alex Sawyer, your first race victor of the 2025 season. He'll tour in with his teammate Seth Gilmore, with Inigo Anton of the Philippines running through in 3rd position. What a fantastic work it has been in this race, and these 3 have not really put a wheel wrong at any point through the course of proceedings. A great result and a great race. Good to see the 2 Chinese drivers battling away as well, Wang Xiongwei and Cheng Meng. And then, of course, Ben Yuing and Rishon Rajiv coming home. Rajiv recovering after his spin. Joshua Berry, unfortunately, burying his car in the gravel trap after his own spin. And the last man home, Thomas Yu Lee, coming home just over half a minute behind the race winner, Alex Sawyer. But the Vietnamese driver has taken first blood in 2025. I'll make my way over to the podium ceremony on the South Paddock. But what a fantastic opening race of the season for Alex Sawyer, for Vietnam, and for Evans GP. Victorious in the opening race of the season.